Oscar Wilde wrote, "Veil after veil of thin, dusky gauze is lifted, and by degrees the forms and colors of things are restored to them, and we watch the dawn remaking the world in its antique pattern." As this new year washes over us like clean, refreshing fog, let's take a moment to set our minds on the concept of renewal for the year ahead. Today's beverage, London Fog, tells the story of a time in history when we let our problems pile up without addressing them, ultimately resulting in a calamity that cost thousands of lives. The warmth of the tea and the scent of the vanilla show us that it's okay to seek comfort in life, as long as we don't become lulled to complacency by it. The citrusy notes of bergamot remind us that sometimes change is good and can cleanse us, making way for exciting new things. The year was 1994. The cafe was in rainy Vancouver, Canada. Mary Loria, a regular customer at the cafe, was pregnant and needed to stay away from coffee. To satisfy that coffee craving, she asked the barista if there was any way they could make black tea into a latte for her. The barista chose Earl Grey tea and added vanilla syrup, most likely to make the most of vanilla's robust, earthy, aromatic flavor to try to impart the spirit of coffee. As a final touch, they added steamed milk to make it a latte. Traditionally, Earl Grey tea was made from black tea from China such as Keemun, and so was originally intended to be drunk without milk. Who knew it combined so beautifully with dairy? It wasn't long before Earl Grey tea lattes began springing up in cafes all over Canada, then all over the world, earning the well-loved nickname London Fog in some parts of the world, and Vancouver Fog or Vanilla Tea Misto in others. The name London Fog is now a proprietary name exclusively for use by Carnelian Rose Tea Company. Starbucks had to drop the name. Although it is now more appropriate to call the drink an Earl Grey latte, people everywhere still call it by its affectionate nickname. Fog can be gorgeous to look at, and imparts a sort of otherworldly beauty over the landscape. But what happens when fog mixes with airborne particles, smoke, and chemicals as byproducts of industrial waste? All that beautiful fog can turn on you and become dangerous and even deadly. This is what happened on December 5, 1952, during an event known as the Great London Smog. Long before this event, Charles Dickens wrote, "Smoke lowering down from chimney pots, making a soft black drizzle, with flakes of soot in it as big as full-grown snowflakes. Gone into mourning, one might imagine, for the death of the sun." Hundreds of years of industrial and residential coal burning made the sooty dark cloud hanging over London a taken-for-granted reality of life. The smog was just chalked up to be typical London weather, and no one really questioned why a city had its own system of weather that the surrounding countryside did not. Certainly no one thought to investigate exactly what chemicals and particles were contained in this airborne mess. The thickness and color of the smog were often compared to that of pea soup, accompanied by a very unsavory smell. On December 5th, weather conditions formed a kind of bubble over London, sealing the city in its own smog, not allowing any gases to escape through the atmosphere as they usually did. Over the next 5 days, the smog grew thicker and more concentrated with coal dust and toxic gases, such as sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide, killing around 4,000 Londoners, consisting mostly of the ill and elderly. The air smelled overwhelmingly like rotten eggs. Visibility was limited to just a few feet in front of people's faces. All transportation ground to a halt, with the exception of the tube, which 500,000 Londoners flooded, knowing they would be otherwise stranded in the city. Criminals of all sorts took this as an opportunity to add injury to madness, and crime ran rampant throughout the city over the next few days, as people struggled for breath. The very air they breathed had turned to poison, as the deadly smog seeped indoors as well. After the weather changed and swept the smog away, the next several weeks and months resulted in thousands more deaths from black lung disease, the inhalation of coal dust, and poisoning from sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide. Londoners now realized something had to be done to change the way they heated their homes and powered their industrial equipment. They were confronted with the awful reality that, as humans, we tend to ignore a problem until we're forced to deal with it. A few years later, in 1956, the Clean Air Act was introduced, beginning a long process of healing as cities worked out ways to better their air quality. And that is the tale of the Great London Smog. As disturbing and eye-opening as that event in history was, we can use it to learn from the past, forging a cleaner future where we can restore the air quality to a much healthier state. Great strides have already been made in this direction, so rest easy knowing that you can inhale as deeply as you want the vanilla and bergamot scents of our Earl Grey latte as we craft this drink together. You will need Earl Grey tea, vanilla syrup, milk, and a way to steam or froth your milk, which we will discuss in a minute. Before we do anything though, let's take a few minutes to whip up that vanilla syrup. Boil equal parts of sugar and water in a pot over medium heat. The quantities are up to you depending on how much syrup you want to end up with, but I'm using 1/2 cup of each. Stir slowly until the sugar has dissolved, then turn the heat down low and let your mixture simmer for about 3 minutes. Congratulations, you've just made simple syrup. But since it is vanilla syrup we're after, let's flavor our syrup. If you are using a vanilla bean, empty about half of the pot into the syrup while it is still warm. By the time it has cooled, the beans will have infused their wonderful wintry flavor. If you are using vanilla extract like me, make sure that it is pure extract, not just vanilla flavoring, which is actually a substitute called vanillin, which has much less complexity of flavor. Wait for your syrup to cool, then add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now that we have a syrup we can be proud of, let's get our tea steeping so that we can focus on our light, fluffy milk foam. Heat 1 cup of water to just below boiling. An easy way to do this is to microwave your water for about 1 minute and 45 seconds. Pop in your Earl Grey tea bag and put 3 minutes on the timer to let it steep. And now for the milk foam to make this drink the true definition of a latte. Pour a 1/4 cup of cold milk. Any kind of milk will do as long as it's cold, but milk with higher fat content does yield a richer foam. Now if you are using the milk steamer on an espresso machine, go ahead and let it heat itself up. When it begins to puff steam, it's ready. Turn it off for long enough to get the wand in your steaming vessel, then turn it back on. You will want the wand at the 3 o'clock position in the cup, with the tip just barely dipping into the surface of the milk. If your milk is rotating clockwise, then you're doing it right. I've never been very good at steaming milk, so we will see how it all turns out. After you see the desired amount of foam, let the wand dip in a bit further to warm the rest of the milk below the surface for a few seconds. When you are done, turn it off and set your frothed milk aside. Don't forget to clean the wand immediately after. If you don't have an espresso machine with a nifty steamer, I'll put a link in the description that suggests 5 other ways for achieving frothed milk. You may try gently heating your milk on your stovetop while using an electric whisk, or for a bit of fun, you can use the pulled milk method, which involves pouring your milk back and forth from one container to the other to get air into the milk. Now it's time to put it all together to go from Earl Grey to London Fog. Remove your tea bag, remember not to squeeze it, after all we don't want cloudy bitter tea, and add about 2 tablespoons of your lovely homemade vanilla syrup. Already this smells heavenly. And now for the pièce de résistance, let's give this beautiful creation its characteristic fog. Your milk foam should have formed so that most of it is pourable hot milk, and the last little bit is a delightful cloud of fluff that you can arrange in a layer over the top of your tea. And that, dear subscribers, is a London fog. Let's see how it smells up close. I'm getting a lot of the fragrance of the tea, very aromatic, but somehow I'm not getting much of a vanilla scent. I wonder if the milk is dampening it somehow. Let's see if the vanilla comes out more when I take a taste. Interestingly, no one particular flavor note is leaping out at me. It's almost as if the London Fog is a creation that is itself different from the sum of its parts. It really is its own thing with its own overall mild, perfumey flavor. It's very lightly sweet with just a touch of delicate flavor from the Earl Grey tea. I could see how this is a very calming thing to drink on a cold, misty winter's day. And I really enjoy the fluffiness of the milk. As we welcome in the new year with our warm, uplifting drink, let's explore other ways to invite freshness into our lives. After hearing about what poor air quality can do if left unchecked, this is the perfect time to look at a few ways we can keep our own air pure. In fact, it's estimated that the indoor air can carry up to 5 times the concentration of pollution than outdoor air, carrying dangerous toxins such as radon and benzene. Don't let your air go stagnant. Moving air and ventilation are ideal. Make good use of your ceiling fan if you have one, or keep an inch of window open. And of course, make sure you're staying on top of regularly replacing your HEPA air filters. Control the humidity in your home to keep mold and mildew away. If you don't have a dehumidifier, rock salt and baking soda placed in strategic places around the house will do the trick. Just look at all the moisture my salt lamp picked up back when I used to live in a very humid environment. Have you ever seen a black wisp of smoke rising from your candle flame, or found soot around the top edge of the jar? Most candles contain paraffin wax, which is a form of petroleum which can be a carcinogen. In addition, certain wicks contain lead and zinc, which can create airborne lead concentrations in your home. It's much safer to opt for soy or beeswax candles. In fact, it's a good rule of thumb to only welcome natural and handmade items into your home whenever you can. Our consumeristic society loves to tell us that we need the coolest, sleekest things in our home, but there's something to be said for choosing the handmade chair your grandfather made from the trees growing in his backyard over the upholstered chair made in a sweatshop. Many mass-manufactured products, especially upholstery and fragrances, are known for off-gassing harmful chemicals into your home as their synthetic materials break down. Luckily, plants can come to the rescue. Some houseplants have been proven to convert harmful chemicals like formaldehyde and benzene into oxygen. Not to mention, a house full of plants just makes for such a relaxing environment. Now, just a few plants will not have much of an impact. You'll need quite a lot to make a difference in your air quality, so that's why it's best to rely on some of the other techniques I've mentioned as well. And finally, there's no substitute for some good old-fashioned house cleaning. And what better time to renew and clean everything than the new year? Any pets and even humans living in the house naturally add dander and dust to your atmosphere, so it's important to stay on top of the dusting. This is also a good time to sort through and reduce clutter as it collects more dust. And of course, house cleaning extends to washing sheets, curtains, rugs, pet beds, and towels, as all these items hold on to all kinds of dust, mildew, and bacteria. The clean white fog in our cup should remind us that it's just as important to be careful of the pollution we add to our neighborhood as well. Just like industrial pollution, residential pollution affects the groundwater, soil, and air for ourselves, our loved ones, and our neighbors. It can cause heart problems, lung disease, and even cancer. Here are 4 ways to keep your neighborhood safe. Reduce smoking. Thousands of people across the world smoking cigarettes that contain all sorts of chemicals can really add up. These days, there are lots of aids out there to help people cut back or even quit, such as nicotine patches. If you have the space, gardening is a hobby that is wonderful for the environment. And if you happen to live in a city or somewhere a garden would not be possible, it's well worth it to look into a nearby Adopt a Tree program. Of course, if you do maintain a garden or a yard, use electric or hand-powered lawn equipment whenever you can. You would be surprised the sheer amount of pollution that comes from such seemingly small pieces of equipment. Finally, keep your car energy efficient by staying on top of its maintenance and learning to drive in an efficient manner, such as reducing engine idling time. This goes for your home appliances too. Look for energy efficient appliances, and don't forget to scour secondhand options to find good deals. Not only will the environment thank you, but I'm sure your utility bills will too. In fact, in some cities, your own mayor thanks you with a nice tax break just by using energy-efficient appliances. The power really is in our hands to move toward a fresher, purer world, so that something like the tragic disaster of 1952 never happens again. As Joseph Conrad once wrote, "Great achievements are accomplished in a blessed warm fog." And with that kind of motivation, I may just make myself a second cup of that blessed warm fog as I take on a bit of house cleaning. Let the thoughts of J.B. Priestley be with you this new year and every time you sit down with a mug of London fog. I have always been delighted at the prospect of a new day, a fresh try, One more start with perhaps a bit of magic waiting somewhere behind the morning. Once again, I am so very glad for your company today as we handcrafted our Earl Grey latte together. With Earl Grey being such a prolific player in today's tea latte, it only makes sense that the next episode will cover none other than Earl Grey tea itself. Please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to tell all your friends to subscribe so we can all be together on the next video. Until then, I hope you make great things happen as your year progresses, and I will see you next time on SteamPour.